When it comes to protecting our democracy, historians say we have to worry not just about preserving the rule of law, but also preserving norms, things that aren't written down in the law, but which maintain our faith in our democratic institutions. Former guy broke norms constantly by lying all the time, brazenly, not releasing his tax returns, and personally profiting off of the presidency, just to name a few examples. Now, ahead of the possible new run for president in 2024, Donald J. Trump, the Republican National Committee, alongside him, is breaking another long-established norm. They're withdrawing from the commission that runs presidential debates because they say the commission is, quote, biased in favor of Democrats. And that would break a norm that began decades ago after the first televised debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon back in 1960. And it raises a really important question for me. What is the RNC afraid of? Are they worried about a Republican candidate's false claims getting exposed in front of millions of American viewers and voters? And speaking of protecting our democracy, Congressman Jamie Raskin says the public will be surprised by some of the new information uncovered by the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection.
That's what citizens in the world's greatest multiracial, multi-religious, multicultural constitutional democracy need to know. What are the weaknesses that these reactionary, alt-right, neo-fascist forces conspired to take advantage of? Because they did. And it will be, I think, both agonizing and riveting for the country to see how close we came to losing it all. It's certainly as close to fascism as I ever want to come in my life.
Joining us now, Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor, and also Kurt Bardella, an advisor to the Democratic National Committee and the GCCC. So, Glenn, I'll start with you on the January 6th investigation. The House committee interviewed former White House advisor Stephen Miller for 8 hours yesterday and repeatedly pressed him on Trump's use of the word "we" in the rally before the insurrection. Help us understand the significance of that line of questioning. Lay it all out.
So the significance, I think, in part, Zerlina, is that Stephen Miller apparently participated in drafting the speech that the president gave at the pre-insurrection pep rally, a speech that was designed to gin up and enrage his supporters, his foot soldiers, and then he directed them at the Capitol and said, now go fight like hell or you won't have a country anymore. Stop the steal because your vote has been stolen from you. So I think the devil's in the details, and maybe the devil helped prepare this speech. But so they wanted to talk to Stephen Miller about it because it seems to me that there's some pretty strong evidence of culpability for inciting the insurrection based on the words Donald Trump spoke. So I think they want to find out, well, how many of those words were actually fed to him by Stephen Miller? And, you know, we had a development yesterday where one of the insurrectionists, a guy named Dustin Thompson, was convicted on all counts by a D.C. jury after he laid out the argument to the jury that, listen, I was just following presidential orders. I did what Donald Trump told me to do. I believe that. The problem for him is it's not a defense, right? But it is incriminating evidence against Donald Trump, and perhaps based on yesterday's testimony before the J6 committee, it may be incriminating evidence against Stephen Miller as well.
That's an interesting point, Glenn. Thank you for that analysis. And Kurt, we mentioned the presidential debates and the fact that it's not a law, it's a norm. This is a historic norm. But they also give candidates, these presidential debates we like to have, folks like Trump and others, big, huge platforms with millions of viewers for lying and gaslighting American voters. Is it good or bad if presidential debates as we know them end?
Well, I think it's bad. I think anytime that you can have the two people who are vying to have the most powerful position in the world be asked objective questions, be challenged on their answers, and have a worldwide audience of millions of people watching them to help evaluate how they're going to vote in the election. I think that's an important part of our election process and part of our democratic norms. And watching the Republicans withdraw from that is just another chink in the armor of our democracy. They don't want to go outside of their Fox News bubble. They don't want to be challenged with facts. and truth. They know that their entire party now is built on lies and treason. And the last thing they want to do is be challenged on that, because there is no answer for that. When confronted with the facts, they will fold like a house of cards. And so they know now that there's nothing they can do but just stick to that right-wing media sphere, their propaganda machines. And really what they're trying to do, Zerlina, is build two different countries. One country that has democratic norms and another country that abides by a completely different set of rules. And what's to stop them at some point from saying, you know what? We only want votes counted by the election clerks that we like, by the election clerks that the Republican Party certifies. That's where they're trying to take this whole thing.
That is not democracy. Glenn, one of the things that has become very clear today as we sit here, and that was not true last week, there's a grand jury happening. Looking into the January 6th insurrection, Ali Alexander has told reporters that he received a subpoena from a grand jury. And you mentioned the fact that there are these other cases that have been going through the court system with the sort of ground level folks who stormed the Capitol physically. Ali Alexander represents the group of people that were planning. Help us understand the significance and how much of that is, how much a shift that is in terms of the seriousness and perhaps the walls closing in, if you will, on some of the Trump folks who thought they may have gotten away with this up to this point.
Yeah, the recent reporting is pretty important, Zerlina, because we've learned that there is a grand jury sitting investigating not only the foot soldiers of the insurrection, the people who actually breached the Capitol at Donald Trump's direction, but we've seen reporting that the criminal probe by the Department of Justice has expanded into the fake electors and the Trump lackeys who were offering the fake elector narrative in trying to push for the overturn of the election. So it becomes really important to know that there have apparently been grand jury subpoenas that have been issued, and the grand jury has been quietly doing its work without us knowing anything about it. The Washington Post actually reported that for the past 2 months, there were former officials in Donald Trump's orbit who had been receiving grand jury subpoenas, and we knew nothing about those. So that's encouraging because it tells us that not only has the DOJ been doing the work behind the scenes with the grand jury, which is a criminal investigation, but it's been doing it without the kind of leaks we would expect to see. So we're being kept in the dark, but that doesn't mean the Department of Justice is not doing its work. And of course, we know Stephen Miller was the point person for Donald Trump on the fake electors. He was running around bragging about how they were going to send alternate electors, let's call them what they are, fraudulent electors. And that makes Stephen Miller one of the spokes in what is a hub and spoke conspiracy. We see a clearer picture emerging of the nature of this criminal conspiracy every day. So I believe DOJ really is digging in.
Well, we will wait and see what they discover. And also, we're looking forward to those hearings from the Jan 6 committee. Glenn Kirshner and Kurt Bardella, thank you, as always, for being here. Please stay safe. Hi, I'm Zerlina Maxwell. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more from Zerlina by clicking any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thanks for watching.